Why hello there, Blair here of Chaos Costumes. I'm here to teach you more about Nomad. Today's project we're going to explore more hard surface sculpting. Without further ado, let's go. So last week we made these sweet daggers. This week we're going to make something new, and this tutorial is going to be for beginners. So let's save it as what it's going to be, which will be Crystal Totem. We won't need this sphere, so let's delete it. And we'll add a tube. So what you're going to do is reduce the faces to 6. And this will be the pedestal for the totem. And what you want to do to adjust its shape is to turn on the grid, which is in the bottom left, and then turn on the magnet, which is in the top right. And then it snaps to the grid. Now I'm going to clone this shape and pull it down a little bit. And the clone is in the top left. Once again, we'll clone that shape, bring it down, and change its length by editing the node on the tube. And also the radius with this little orange node. Now with the gizmo, I'll keep cloning shapes until I get what I want. And then I'll use the tube option with snapping turned off. You see how it rotated it? We don't want that. We want to make sure to turn snapping off in the top menu here. Now I want to add a hole so we have a nice little rim on our totem so our crystals can seat into it. Now I'll clone that tube, and we're going to use this asset to make the crystals. So let's make it a little smaller, and then reduce the faces to 4. Now we'll lock the view by clicking on the little cube and adding more points. And also, we're going to change the radius to make a point and then taper it. To adjust the radius, it's up here in this menu. Now we're just going to keep cloning this shape until we have a crystal cluster. I hope by now you'll be familiar with the clone tool because we will be using it a lot. I'm just using the gizmo to push and pull and rotate the duplicate crystals around. My goal is to fill up this entire plate. You're just going to keep cloning in the top left corner and clicking on the gizmo to move your new shape. Looking at this, and I don't quite like the proportions. So what I'm going to do is select all the crystals and make them a little bigger and a little taller. And I'll take this primitive and make it a little shorter, making sure to turn off snapping. And keep in mind, the snapping to grid does not work unless you select a face in this little cube on the far right. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to make a copy of the center pillar and make it a little smaller and a little longer. This shape won't be used right now, but we're just separating it before we glue everything together. I'm just going to hide it for now. Now that I'm happy with the base, I'm going to join it all together by voxel remeshing it, making sure to have sharp edges toggled. Let's keep filling out this base with smaller crystals. So I'm just going to shrink our existing shape down and just clone that shape to fill out the bottom. We ideally want everything to be as random as possible, so that's why I'm rotating the shapes a bit. That I'm pretty happy with this arrangement of crystals, what I'm going to do is validate each crystal and then trim off a little corner of it just to make them a little bit more random. So once again, I'm selecting a crystal, validating it, and trimming off the corner. Select an individual crystal, validate it, and validating it is in the top left of the menu that pops up. You see that? Right there. And trimming it with the trim tool. This will just make your crystals a lot more organic and a little less consistent. So you see here, when I trimmed that crystal, it made a hole. I have no idea why. So I'm just gonna undo that and trim it in a different location. Now I've filled in the geometry. Now that I'm happy with the crystals, what I'm gonna do is hide the base and then join all the crystals by using the select tool that's down here. I'll just join them all, and it validates all the shapes. Now to make sure that the boolean of the crystals will be solid at the bottom, what I'm going to add is a cylinder. And I'll show the base, just to make sure everything is touching. And I can push and pull the primitive of the cylinder around with these little nodes. And we'll make the cylinder go all the way to the edge of the void, but not past it. And then we can join the crystals to the base that we just made, and then boolean out a copy of the base. So now it's completely flat. There's some little extra here, but I'll just trim away. There we go, our crystals have a nice little flat base, good for printing. Now I can boolean out that core that we saved and set aside. This is for a fun little feature that we will add once it's done. So what I want to do is increase the size of this base by 0.02 so that there's a little bit of a clearance for when it prints. That way these two little pieces will fit together a little easier. Now I want to add texture in Procreate with a brush, an alpha stamp as it were. And so we will make the background black. And then the brush I'm going to use, you can either use the industrial palette, but I think I'm going to go organic spires. And this is going to be the easiest alpha stamp you could ever make. You just draw a little circle of the texture with a brush that's really big, and that's it. Literally, that's it. And we'll just export that as a PNG and save it. Now we'll swing back into Nomad and use that juicy new brush that we made. So going with the stamp, and we'll import our fresh stamp we just made. Now you want to make sure the filter over here is front-facing vertex only. That is very important, and that is probably the most important little checkbox that you'll never find on your own. Let's bump up this intensity just a little bit and stamp in our texture. So it kind of looks like stone. But making alpha stamps really bumps up the detail in your sculptures pretty easily. We mostly just wanted to make sure that the flat bottom stays flat. Now that I'm looking at it, this lip right here will create a ton of supports, and I don't want that. So let's add another tube to fix that and reduce the division to 6. And then we'll make it shorter, making sure to turn off snapping in this top bar here. And then we'll toggle the radius and add a hole to make sure it's hollow in the middle. And making sure snap to grid is still on. We can use the gizmo and pull this down. And we can clone this shape down and turn on snapping of rotation to 90 degrees. And then I'm going to change the pivot down here so that the pivot is centered on the shape and rotate it. Just to add some symmetry down here. I'm looking and the hole isn't quite as big as the void that we made. So let's edit it by selecting the tube and clicking on this little blue node and dragging it out a bit. Now we fixed our little problem. So let's use the select tool and join everything together that we just made. Now I want to add the texture back, so I'll have to voxel remesh it at a pretty high resolution, making sure to keep sharp edges toggled. I'll just go back in with the stamp real small and fix these areas. Now we'll be able to print without supports. Let's decimate, just so our file sizes aren't enormous. You want to make sure to turn off even topology, that little triforce. Now we can name our layers. Then using the selected option here, if you have multiple things viewable, and save it. I like saving my stuff to the drive so I can use my computer. I go between Apple products and PC products, so this is my solution around that. Now it's time to slice. So I'm in Bamboo Studio this time instead of Orca Slicer, but let's add our shapes. So I'm just gonna hit no a bunch of times. And our shape is microscopic. Hi. So let's scale it up. So I'll choose this value and just make it 80 millimeters. Make sure uniform scale is toggled. It's a reasonable size. Let's make a new plate. So I'm seeing here, this needs a huge repair job. And if we try to repair this, it's gonna take forever. If you do repair it, it's gonna make a whole bunch of holes, and we don't want that. Let's fix it in Nomad. So the big issue that we had was joining everything instead of voxel remeshing it. So what we're gonna do is turn up the resolution pretty high with sharp edges enabled. This will take a while to calculate, but it'll be worth it. If you wind up doing it in too low of resolution, it will get rid of a lot of beautiful shapes. And now what we can do is decimate it quite substantially so that the file size isn't enormous. There, now we fixed it. All we gotta do is just repair the base a little bit. That's fine, it won't ruin the geometry. My seam position can stay at random. Change this top surface just so it's a little stronger. Concentric isn't the strongest. And make sure to disable support. It probably won't build any, but just in case. Now we can slice it. Now that we have the repaired crystal, we'll make sure that the seam position is aligned. I wanted to print with no prim. Now we can slice that and print it. Since there's no support to break off of these guys, let's paint them. It is a simple paintbrush and paint. You'll need a paper towel. So when dry brushing, you want to make sure to wipe off a lot of the paint just so your brush is loaded, but very lightly adding color. You want to catch the high points. Thing to remember is that we don't want to come in at this angle. You want the flat side of your brush to catch the high edges. So I found these sweet little LED tea lights on Amazon, and I want to use those to make the crystal glow. Getting them started is pretty simple. You have to unscrew them completely, and there's this little paper here you want to remove. And underneath that paper is a battery. And all you need to do is just screw it back on. And to turn it on, you screw it all the way down. The cool part about these LEDs is they come with a nifty remote. And just like that, you got a little glowing crystal. Personally thought it was a ton of fun making the little totems, and I wanted to use up more of my transparent filament because I literally just bought it for the potion bottles. Just a reminder, I am releasing my good files on cults. So if you just want to download the STLs to investigate them, the link is down below. And just a reminder, if you like what I do, please like the video. If you want to see something specific or just give me some feedback, leave a comment down below. And if you really like what I do, please subscribe. Every little bit helps. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.